Alright, before we get started, I just wanted to preface this with my general overall opinion. No matter what I have to say throughout the rest of this video, Klonoa Phantasy Reverie series is absolutely worth buying. Because no matter what, the games are represented properly, they play correctly, they have everything that they're supposed to, and also very importantly, aside from downloading the PS1 original on the PS3 or Vita, this is the only affordable way to play the main Klonoa games. So yeah, it's $40 for 2 games is a lot cheaper than the Wii version of the first game, and then just 2 on the PS2 is, I think they're $100 each. So that's the reason I hadn't played Klonoa 2 before, and it was most of the reason I bought Phantasy Reverie series. Oh, it's an affordable way to play 2. That's helpful to me. So this is coming after I have not only finished both games, I got the Platinum in the collection, so I've seen what they had to offer. I have my experience, but I also have my experience with older versions. Not of 2, but I have all the mirror medals in the Wii version of the first game, and if you want to go watch my old-ass live stream showing me trying to get them, those are some hard sons of bitches. Some of the most precise platforming I've ever seen, so I did it because I love Klonoa, and when you love something that much, I do want to support it, but I also am a bit more critical about what it gets wrong. So I just sort of wanted to do something quick and talk about all my issues with the Phantasy Reverie series collection, and I'm just doing it in this format because it's a lot faster. I just wanted this to be something quick. Anyway, it's mostly going to be focused on the first game because, like I said, I have never played the second game before, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But the first game I have played plenty on the Wii, not the PS1 version though, so seeing as it is a updated version of the Wii remake as a starting point, it's the closer comparison. And I think the most obvious place to start off is going to be the visuals, since that's what was first shown off in the trailer, that fooled a lot of people into thinking it was a completely new remake because it looks so different from the Wii game. I think the Wii version looks better. Phantasy Reverie series runs in a higher resolution, and that's nice, but it's too bright sometimes. That's really the best way I can put it. Sometimes the colors tend to bleed together too well, and it can be hard to see proper detail. The Wii version, I feel like, had a more balanced picture. In addition, they reverted Klonoa's design back to something much closer to the PS1 original, while the Wii version used something much closer to his Klonoa 2 redesign, which, honestly, that's the design that's been used in most games, so it's more considered Klonoa's appearance, I guess. I prefer the slightly taller, older, smaller pupils look of Klonoa. He has a shirt in the Wii version. That's kind of nice. But you couldn't fix the proportions, but you could still get a costume that matched his original design, giant collar and all. So at the end of the day, you had the best of both worlds, and you don't with the new one. You're getting the old design, and you're getting the old design dressed like a Mu, the standard enemies, because they took away all of the extra costumes you could get in the Wii version. There's also another one you can get. He's dressed as Joka, I think it was. Yeah, it was Joka, which is part of a $20 DLC because, fuck you, Namco. What the hell are you thinking with that? But that's it. That's all the costumes you're going to get, so it's just content that was being removed from the previous remake of the game. And it wouldn't bother me so much if it weren't for the fact that it is clearly still based on the Wii version. They could have done a more direct port and had more to work with. Though, I suppose it would have highlighted some inconsistencies with the second game, but we'll get back to that later. It's not just on the visual side of the presentation things, but the audio. Music is still great as always. No problems there. They got it perfect the first time and have never felt any desire to change it. But the voices, man. The Wii version completely re-recorded all of the Phantomillion voices. And from what I understand, they replaced almost all of the actors with the exception of Kumiko Watanabe, was it? the voice of Klonoa. That was the only one that stuck around. And I guess they really wanted to be true to the original version because they're using the original voices, ripped straight from the PS1 game, so the audio quality is god-awful. You know, it's not even... It is super compressed, and there is a certain charm to that. You know, it's why I like sometimes using the really bad voice samples for Mega Man ZX Advent in that collection. But it just kind of bothers me that it is inconsistent, because you play Klonoa 2, it sounds fine, but Klonoa 1 voice samples sound like ass. And it's strictly the ones in the cutscenes, because any other voice clip, you know, the standard things Klonoa says during gameplay, his normal is wahoo, his normal manya, his yupa, all of that is still from the Wii version, and you can tell that it's because it's much higher quality. There's also the possibility that it was done because they're using the original PS1 script, so despite the fact that it is a made-up language, they wanted it to match up correctly. But I didn't even know until recently that the script for the Wii version was changed enough that people cared. Like, I understand it was a little bit different, but for the most part, it seemed the same to me, so, you know, it felt like it was just a different translation on the same thing, so it didn't, I saw no reason why they should have gone with the original PS1 version. They could have just used the Wii script, the Wii voices. It wouldn't have even caused any inconsistencies, because the only recurring character between the two games is Klonoa, and his voice was the same, so it didn't matter if the voices didn't match the PS1 version. You wouldn't notice it if you were strictly looking in the vacuum of this collection. I did, however, notice the lack of the English voices. It's sad, but I get it. The English voices are not especially popular, and it would have been inconsistent if the first game had them, the second game didn't. I understand why they removed that. I just hate it because I thought it was kind of fun that they were there. Klonoa sounds too old, but whatever. I honestly don't think they're that bad. It's definitely a lot better than the names. A couple of the character names were changed between the original translation and the Wii translation. I'm sorry, guys. I think the Wii ones are a lot better, and I'm really upset that they instead reverted back. Hupo's name was, the spelling was changed. The PS1 and Phantasy Reverie version, it's spelled like it should be pronounced Hupow, except you can clearly hear the voice saying Hupo, so the Wii spelling Hewpoe is just more phonetically accurate. It makes more sense, and it just kind of looks better. Joker versus Joker, I can go either way. I prefer Joker, but that one doesn't really bother me. But man, guys, I'm sorry. Songstress Lafise sounds much better than Diva Lafise, alright? Diva has a much more 90s pop star sound to it. Songstress sounds more elegant, which matches the character better. I think it's just a better wording, and I'm, again, upset that it disappeared. Much like all of the extra content from the Wii version vanished. I already mentioned the costumes, but really the giant loss was the complete lack of the mirror mode. Now, the actual levels being mirrored, that I don't care about that. That doesn't matter. But the real star of mirror mode was that each level now had a secret portal that led to a, as I mentioned earlier, a super hard challenge. They were infuriating. It was incredible and slightly angering how precise they wanted you to be. But it definitely was extra content. It certainly was something to really test the players and say like, oh, you like Klonoa? Fucking prove it. Go for it. And I appreciated that. So the fact that that's just completely gone kind of makes the game feel a little bit empty. And it means that if you want the real challenge, the real experience, the Wii version of the game is, I would still say, preferable. The difficulty is a little bit better balanced in Phantasy Reverie series, because if you're playing on they introduced difficulty levels, and if you're just playing on normal, it goes back to the 3 hearts of the original as opposed to the 5. But honestly, either way, you're probably not going to die from taking damage, so it doesn't really matter. The wind move is gone, but I never used it anyway. That's basically it, and it's the reason why I'm still happy I own the Wii version of Klonoa. I wouldn't get rid of it. That thing's worth something. I like having it, and it's nice to have a physical version of the game because thanks Bandai Namco America, you just didn't feel like giving us a physical one, huh? Yeah, well, didn't think it was going to do well, so you didn't market it? Yeah, well, egg on your face, hashtag Klonoa sweep, let's do this. I heard, apparently it's already sold like 1 million, not even already, like, within a day of its release, it had sold like 1 million copies on Steam alone, so I assume, considering it was a pretty low-budget production, I think they got their money's worth, and I'm hoping that this means that they will actually do something more with this. Give us a Klonoa 3, goddammit. We want it. The last Klonoa remake failed, but this one will do it. Give us more. Anyway, so like I said, that's pretty much everything I have against the version of the first game that's included, and I can't really go into the second because I have nothing to compare it against. But it does highlight some weird issues with inconsistency between the two games, and that's something that they clearly did want to avoid. I'm sure part of the reason, at least, they cut out the English voices from the first game, though honestly, I feel like they probably would have done it anyway. It's probably the reason they cut out all that other stuff, because these super hard extra challenges, all the extra costumes, they wouldn't have been in Klonoa 2 unless they wanted to add them, and I don't think Namco gave Monkey Craft a lot of money. It's sad to say that I think their previous work of Wonder Boy, Asha, and Monster World probably had a bigger budget, and that's kind of sad, because that's not a high-budget game either. But since they didn't want to add content, the best way to ensure parity between the two games would have been cutting things from the first game to better match it. And I guess it just kind of lucked out that it meant it better matched the PS1 original, kind of just throwing the Wii version out. And it's why other changes, like the way speech bubbles are changed now. They, in the PS1 version, they were text boxes that appeared on the bottom of the screen. The Wii version changed it to speech bubbles that would appear next to the characters. This goes back to the text boxes because they wanted it to be consistent between the two games. But even then, they couldn't get that consistency quite right because the first game used speech, but not because, but in the Wii version of the first game, cutscenes completely advanced automatically. There was no need to press a button to advance the text, and that's retained in Phantasy Reverie series. PS2 version of Klonoa 2, I assume you hit a button to advance the text because that's retained in Phantasy Reverie series. So in one game, you can just sit back and let the cutscenes play. The other one, you have to hit a button to advance the text, but not even all the time. Sometimes it's automatic. And I feel like they should have just gone the fully automatic route. If they had just programmed it to immediately advance to the next line when the prompt would appear, it would have been fine. I swear there's a slight difference in their physics. I haven't completely tested this, so I could be wrong. I swear Klonoa slides a little bit more in Klonoa 2, and it's a little bit of a problem. I'm 90% sure that his the upwards jump he would get at the end of his flutter was higher in the first game because that's something that they added for the Wii version and didn't add for the new version of 2. I figured they would have done something like Crash Insane, where they would have had the same physics engine controls between the two games, but I guess that's just not what we're doing now, so it's inconsistent pretty much this whole way around. Whenever you died in the first game, you would get a screen showing you like 1 life deducted from your total. They don't have that in Klonoa 2. And that's something that they added specifically for this version because it definitely wasn't on the Wii. So maybe they added it for the Wii version and then forgot to add it for 2. I have no idea what the hell was going on here. You turned in a good game here, Monkey Craft, but something about the The development of it is interesting. Something happened here, I'm sure of it. Because they also did not go a nice extra mile and make quality of life improvements that would have been kind of nice. The three I can think of. First off, you couldn't have thrown a couple more lives into Klonoa 2. I didn't know this before. Klonoa 2 is surprisingly difficult. It's the hardest Klonoa game just getting to the end of the game. You know, Klonoa on the Wii still wins out for just hardest 100%ing. God, those mirror challenges. The GBA games also still have some tough extra challenges. But Klonoa 2, some of those end levels are surprisingly difficult, and could have given us a couple extra lives. I got a game over right at almost the last possible second I could have. A couple extra lives would have been nice with that. They could have fixed a couple of the Mamet doll placements in the second game. There's one in the Arc Revisited stage. I had to look up online because you rocket up break through a couple blocks, and there's one that you don't reach. And I'm like, okay, given the point in the stage where I am, it has to be hidden in there. I know it. But I could not figure out how to get to it. I could grab the enemy at the apex of its height, immediately rocket up, and I would just barely not reach it. And I looked it up, and it turns out, okay, you have to take an enemy over here, which is a whole other thing, and then jump off it at the exact time the other enemy is at the apex of its up-down movement, and immediately grab it and in your upwards momentum and then immediately rocket up. I feel like that's way too difficult to figure out. There's just nothing about it that feels like that's necessary. They could have just removed that third block and said, okay, you decided to go up here. Hey, there it is. Just grab it. You don't have to go through this whole extra rigmarole shit. And in terms of control across both games, I've heard at least a complaint that it seems like they're using pill-shaped hitboxes like Crash and Sane had a problem with. I can sort of notice it. I felt like I was slipping off platforms a little more frequently, though both games do have very small platforms it's easy to fall off of anyway, so it's not a huge deal. But you couldn't have made the wind bullet go a little bit further. Easy mode definitely gives it extra distance. So there's that, but on normal difficulty, you couldn't have just a little bit further. Just a little bit. Hard mode could be the exact original. But there were several times across both games, so I'm like, come on, if I could just be a tiny bit further away, this would be less stressful. And I felt this in the Wii game, so it's always been there, but you couldn't have given it slight homing, up or down. If an enemy is slightly above you, you're on a ramp, they're slightly above you, it's possible for the wind bullet to fire directly in front of you, go under their feet, and it misses. In a situation like that, you couldn't have made it home and curve up or down a little bit. It would have also made those jumping through several enemies in the air a bit easier because it would give you a little bit more wiggle room on when you fire the wind bullet. A change like that would have been appreciated, and it does make you really appreciate the amount of work that did go into the Wii version, adding a lot of extra stuff, getting things updated, making it a little more comfortable, while still retaining everything that the original had. Though apparently some people do still consider it a bit of an inferior remake. I disagree, whatever. But I wish that Phantasy Reverie series could have just done a little bit more. Like I said before, they also worked on Asha and Monster World, and that game had a couple more changes from the original game, some of which the placements of some of the life drops were a pain in the ass, but there were at least some changes in there that felt like, okay, that is a good improvement to the original. And again, many, many things that still could have been fixed. I've done a whole video on that game already, so I won't bore you with the details. I can only hope that the sales of Phantasy Reverie series have proved to Namco that this series does have an audience. It is worth putting a little bit of love into. And it would be nice if we got a patch that would fix some of this stuff. I'm not going to hold my breath out on that, but it would be nice if They make Klonoa 3, please God, and it really does feel like this is the culmination of Klonoa design up to this point. And by up to this point, I mean it's been 20 years since the last new Klonoa game. Jesus Christ. So they've got a lot of time to make up for it. Come on, Namco. Give us some more Klonoa.